welcome back to the How I Got Greenlit podcast. As always, I am your host, Sam, and I am joined by my co-host, writer, director, and the creator of Project Greenlight, Alex Keledjian. And as you can see, we are in a triple box because we have a guest. We have a medical doctor and advisor to dramas and TV shows and films and medical sets, Agnes Scoville. Agnes, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for coming on. So real quick, Alex, how do you know Agnes?
Agnes is good friends with my girlfriend, who I often mention on this show because I make her watch the movies that we have to watch just to get another opinion. And they've known each other for a long time. And it's funny, we're kind of meeting on the show. I talked to you on the phone, but we've always been threatening to come visit you down in lovely Florida there. I see the palm trees waving in the background.
Right. That's right. The little shadow there. Yeah. So it's been, 20 some years that I've known Sabina, and she's smarter than I am, more beautiful than I am. She's like the person that I always wanted to be. And oh, by the way, whip smart. She's a research chemist. So the doctor, the MD, has nothing on the brains of this woman.
Yes, she's the lab tech.
A lot of good press here for Alex's girlfriend.
And funnily enough, that's how she described you. She's smarter than me, she's prettier than me, and I wanted to be her. So I think that's a good basis of a friendship.
So Agnes, before we start getting into your thoughts on movies and television shows that take place in medical settings, the first thing I want to know is, how did you get into this field as a consultant for medical shows? Give us a little bit of your background and how you started getting into this, this interesting entertainment consultant field.
I was in the Navy, actually. So I was a Navy doctor, cool. And I left the military in 2005 after having spent a year in Iraq. And as I was leaving San Diego, there was, just some message that came through the military channels saying, oh, we need a consultant for a TV show in Los Angeles. And I was the only person in the entire group, the medical group in San Diego, that was interested in this. I said, sign me up. This sounds fun. So I went up to LA and was interviewed by the folks that were making ER at that time. And they wanted they called it an atmospheric advisor. So I had to tell them how to do the episodes that were based on one of their characters that had been deployed to Iraq. And so that's how I kind of got into it. And then subsequently I moved to LA. And, when you live in Hollywood, West Hollywood, you always have a friend who's a writer or knows somebody who's a writer that needs just that little medical input. And so, there was a lot of those sort of casual interactions where people would just curbside me. But it was really fun, and I, hats off to the writers on the ER show. They're amazing.
So you say atmospheric. Can you go into a little bit more in depth about that? What does that mean?
So that's what I was like, what is that title? That's going to be behind my name? What is that? Give me more background. So what it meant was actually they would set up the tents. They would set up, the cots. They would set up what they thought the Marine Corps would look like at that time in Iraq. And I would say, no, the T-shirt should actually be brown and not green. And no, you wouldn't have bags of blood hanging here. And so I was, and I read the script and I was on set every day and just kind of would make points, to the official ER consultants that were there that were, hired full time and were on set every day. But I'd say, you might want to tweak that just a little bit. So, it was just kind of standing by and making sure that the icing was perfect for the cake.
Alex, you got a question?
When you were deployed overseas, obviously like a term like a MASH is something from the early 50s. What is it called? A med station? How do you service as a medical professional in the services? How do you help a soldier that's hurt? Where is that taking place?
So, the military has 3 different branches of medical personnel that support each one of, so you have Air Force doctors, Army doctors, and Navy doctors. And so each of those different branches has different jobs for the medical personnel to perform. But in general, they love ER doctors because we are very jack of all trades that can put us anywhere and we'll figure it out. And so what they did with us was to put us on the the hospital that was being set up right before the invasion. So we were ready to receive the first casualties. And then they sent some of us, thank God, not me, literally far in with the invading Marines so that they were almost like medics on steroids. But regarding the MASH tent that you saw on TV back in the, whatever it was, 70s, 80s, embarrassingly enough, some of our equipment was the same. Like the tents with the wooden poles, like that was, so some things have not changed. But so we basically received casualties and tried to patch them up as best as possible and then ship them off to Kuwait or Germany for definitive treatment.
Agnes, how far into ER's run was it going when you were brought on?
I think that was season 11.
Oh, wow.
That was towards the end. Yeah. That's when one of their characters had been deployed. It was 2004 or 5 that I did that.
I was thinking it could be either Iraq. You know what I mean? Because I think the show's been on long enough.
It was on a
Gulf War I or II. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you came in on. They specifically wanted your combat medical experience to
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And then from that, you kind of evolved into an all-around medical consultant in different fields.
Right. Right. You know, and like I said, you know, I can remember like countless conversations with writers that would ask me, well, can you do this? Can you do that? Like, give me an idea about this. And I literally would, I think people who are, you guys will probably find this, right? When you're interviewing professionals who are not in the industry as actors or writers or directors, like we kind of like give a lot of effort. I gave a lot of effort to say, oh, I'm trying to come up with this perfect toxidrome, this perfect poisoning that will have the, you know, the defendant collapse on the witness stand, you know, because I would really put a lot of time into it. And then they wouldn't even write it in, you know. So it was, if it didn't fit the narrative of the story, the medical part just got tossed out. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. They would always, it's drama over reality because it's a scripted thing. It's funny because I was having a conversation with Sabina and I was saying that, I said, it was something like, how could something like that happen? And I said, oh, like this, and this. And she kind of looked at me like, God, you're dark. And I'm like, well, I'm a writer. I have to put my mind in the head of the killer and the criminal and the bank robber in order to be the good guy as well. Like you have to have the ability to empathize with. It's, you know, it's kind of like the profiler job in you know, all these shows that we see now is that that there's a skill to, you know, in the mind of a killer, or how do you imagine that something so heinous could happen? And
right.
You kind of have to be that way. My real question for you is, because you've been practicing a while, you've been in the military, out of the military. I would think with your experience, you could have the cushiest job in sort of the medical professional field, but you still go to the ER every day, or when you work. Is that correct?
I do. Whoa. And ER doctors are literally, we're like Starbucks workers. We come to the job, we punch in, and we punch out. And
you also do you misspell my name on the toe tag?
I could have. I probably would. You got a difficult last name. I just put
Exactly.
Alex K.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But is it? I mean, I imagine it's a personality litmus test, right? It's you want to have challenge and different injuries or maladies that come your way. You're not sitting back and, you know, letting the machines do the work for you at some cushy clinic, right? Like you're in it to.
Yeah, there's definitely a personality of ER that draws in people who are a little ADHD, you know, have a lot of outside interests,
right.
Because we constantly need to be stimulated. We like to be jack of all trades, but master of none, really, because we're not the OBGYN, we're not the neurosurgeon, we're not the pediatrician, right. But you have to know enough. But, you know, it's that stimulation of, oh, I haven't seen that, you know, interesting street drug overdose that just walked in here. Oh, let me just try to figure this out, you know? So, and I don't mean to belittle people who are suffering or, you know, from their illnesses, but there is an intellectual little light that goes on when there's something new I haven't seen in a while.
Well, I'm also a jack of all trades. I have a lot of knowledge in my job. It's writing, directing, producing. I do the music. I do a lot of stuff. I just recently, and that's my lament too. I also have ADHD. I think it drives our life choices. The full quote is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one." So,
Oh, wow. I'm going to use that tomorrow when I talk to the neurosurgeon.
so please, I want you to, I think it shifted my whole worldview, because a lot of people that have this kind of atypical framework, we are made to feel bad. It's like, if you only put that, smart brain into the one thing, you could be the best at it, but get bored and you know 10 different things. But what the whole quote is trying to say is, when you cut it off in the middle, jack of all trades, master of none, it takes a negative connotation. But when you add the rest of the phrase, it's often saying well, yeah, but they're pretty good at that thing too. So I wanted to kind of give you that, because I could see the snobby old MD in the clinic and with the white, nice white building and the manicured lawn, be like, "Oh, you ER doctors, you're a bunch of spazzes running around with blood on your coats and blah, blah, blah." And it's like, yeah, but I also probably know 100 techniques that are just being developed now because I had to use it in order to save this patient. And if I used your same tried and true method, they'd be dead. So you're welcome. There's a lot of that sort of looking down on what a traditional norm of a job is, especially, for you and I. We know what we saw MASH on broadcast television. That's our generation, So we kind of batted around what would be good shows and films that you might be able to use as examples. One of my favorite shows from last year, I know it was a little older, but we watched it last year, was Chernobyl. And that's such an awful way to go. I mean, there's many awful, I'm sure you could tell us all kinds of stories, but something about radiation poisoning, we're afraid of it because we don't understand it completely, how it works. It's almost magic in its way. It's invisible. It's almost like a biblical curse, like the land is uninhabitable for hundreds of years. It just feels very Old Testament. Have you had firsthand experience with somebody who's had radiation poisoning or training in that?
I mean, thank goodness, no. But, it was one of those things that we did have to memorize in residency, and of course, tune into it a lot more with when we were deployed, because there was this theory that Saddam had, weapons of mass destruction, or could pack a bunch of dirty material, nuclear waste into a Scud missile or whatever.
Right.
And I thought, when I watched Chernobyl, I thought they did a really good job of just how the slow, awful drain it is until the person just, dwindles down to nothing,
yes.
And that's
shut down, and it's
right.
Something I wanted to ask you, Agnes, you're an ER doctor, and this is fascinating because so many medical shows take place in the emergency room. And I believe that the idea is, right, that the reason so many medical dramas happen at all is because there's nothing more dramatic than life or death stakes. Like at the end of the day, that matters more than a divorce, than losing your house. It's life or death. But when you watch an ER, which by the way, when ER first premiered, it was getting 30 million views an episode, which now would be by far the most successful show on television. But what I'm wondering is, every time you tune into one of these shows, every single episode is life or death stakes, right? It's the most dramatic thing that's ever happened. And my question for you as an ER doctor is, I assume every day obviously is not like that, but are there ever any episodes of these dramas where you're like, yeah, I've had a day like that for sure?
Yes. And it depends on where you work.
Okay.
So I worked in Los Angeles, San Diego, Washington, D.C. Now I'm currently in Miami. I worked in St. Louis. I would say the days that were like that were closest to the ER show, were in St. Louis, Missouri. And it was because it was constantly overcrowded. There were unfortunately, sadly, the people there are very, very ill, meaning that they have multiple chronic medical problems that have them just teetering on the brink at all times. Even at a young age, like 30, 40 years old, they could be morbidly obese, terrible diabetes that's uncontrolled, on dialysis, already have heart failure. and they come in extremis because they just, I don't know why, but there's so many ill people there that literally it's jumping from one tragedy to the next. And it's a very violent place. There's a lot of gunshot wounds, and it's a psychiatric facility. So there were many, many patients who were jumping off the stretcher and attacking nurses at any given moment. So that was like the ER show, you know?
Well, just how do I say this? It's become in our society, the ER is the receptacle for everything, right? Like it's not just what it's meant to be for. You may be saying that this literally was in addition a psychiatric facility, but default in most of our hospitals and most of our big cities, that's where they end up because we don't have a facility for them, right? They're homeless, they're whatever, they're and as far as the chronic part, they can't afford it. They kind of limp along and take Advil for some chronic pain until it's completely overwhelming them. And that's, I mean, as we said, my girlfriend works in the health field as well, on the, you know, in the sort of bureaucratic side of it. But that's why America's health system is so messed up. I mean, reason one of 1,000 is we don't have any sort of eye on preventative or lifestyle or diet or health or exercise. And if you don't have health care and you stumble into an ER, that for most people is the only possible place they can get any health care. In some rural locations, there's not even a urgent care for 100 miles in any direction, right? So you become the first stop for anybody to enter the, you know, American healthcare system, correct?
I will, yeah, there's a couple of different things about that. One is I've watched over the last 20 years of practicing a very dramatic shift in that people come to the ER because they're anxious too. So apart from the people who really are sick, like the people in St. Louis who desperately needed healthcare, there are millions and millions of worried, well people that come in because they're anxious. And I don't know if it's because there is, they watch TV shows and they say, oh, you know, I have this cough, maybe it's pneumonia, I better go get it checked out. Whereas, you know, 50 years ago, their grandmother would say, you're fine, you have a cold, go to bed.
Walk it off.
Right. People come in because they, you know, have one episode of diarrhea or vomiting from food poisoning and they think they're dying and they come in. I'm like, it's fine. Drink some Gatorade. You'll be okay. But there's this, now there's, and I saw this kind of getting there in LA, but I see it very much so in Miami. People come in and if you don't do blood work, you don't do an x-ray, you don't do a CAT scan, then they feel like, oh, well, that doctor's not very good because she didn't do anything to check me out. I'm like, you're fine. What do you need? You know, but I can't say you're fine because then I'll get a bad health score when they go and review my work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it now in terms of, you know, it's like the metric medicine, like we are judged if we don't, like, it's almost like literally the patients are coming to Starbucks where they just want like, oh, I want that latte. They're like, oh, doctor, I want these tests and I want the MRI.
Right. And you get the 5-star rating like you would any other consumer.
Absolutely. Good, right? And my pay is based on my rating.
I see.
So there's a strong incentive for me to give out those extra narcotics. There's a strong incentive for me to overutilize healthcare.
Well, I thought you were going to say lawsuit. It's interesting. Like, I thought we were going to talk about tort reform and how, like, if you, like, the whole point of having you is you've got, you know, decades of experience and you can see in a 5-minute examination, probably, you know, 95% what much more expensive and, you know, invasive tests would tell you, right? Like, yeah, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. That's why we want human professionals with like tons of experience. But yeah, I always thought that the acceleration of tests and the diagnostic stuff was the cover your ass level of,
that's definitely part of it.
Legal
that's part of it.
Run these $5,000 worth of tests just in case we're opening ourselves up to a lawsuit, right?
Absolutely. That's definitely part of it.
Yeah. So,
but going back to the sort of the population that does not have healthcare, that is a big problem too. And especially people who are unhoused because there's literally nowhere for them to go. So, you know, I call the ER now, I call it the last stop on the train of misery because There's just, we're the place where you go when you have been assaulted, you've been in a car accident, you lost your phone and you can't figure out how to get home. Like literally people come in for that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's almost like what a church was in medieval times, sanctuary.
Completely. Right.
Yeah.
Agnes, sorry, Alex. I have a question. I want to go back to like your experience with ER for a second, the show, not your profession.
Sure.
Was it an intoxicating experience getting onto that set for the first time, right? You're going from the Navy, from a medical field, and then all of a sudden you're in Hollywood, right? You're near the television stars of that day. I mean, that must have been kind of a mind F.
Okay, so yes and no.
Okay.
First
I was going to guess no. she's been in combat, and
I know, but it's kind of weird. It's like
she's been in a Miami ER. Like none of this is exciting.
So here's the thing: if you had said you are going to go and meet your favorite musician on stage, I would have been incontinent. I would have been just like blathering because I am such a music lover. Film and TV, I was always like, okay, that's interesting. That art form is amazing. It's great. But I just wasn't as kind of overwhelmed. I was like, when they put me on the Warner Brothers lot, I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I deserve to be here. Let me in. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is amazing. And then when I met, the director and the director of photography, people were super, super nice. And, the talent, the stars are really pleasant and friendly with me. And in fact, Noah Wiley asked me to be his +1 because his wife didn't want to go to the Lakers game. So we got like I sat next to him the whole game. He's a super nice guy.
It didn't hurt that you're a hot blonde.
No, I just think, I think that it seemed pretty chill. And everybody was so friendly that there was nothing really scary about it.
If anything, your your neutrality on film and television is probably part of what made you perfect for it, right? Because you're not a
fanboy weirdo.
You're not a fanboy or fangirl, so you're not going there fangirling out, right? Yeah. So in many ways, that probably made you a great choice for that job.
Yeah.
Well, they actually offered me like the full time because one of the other ER consultants was ready to kind of step away, and they're like, you can have this job if you want. This is the schedule, this is the pay. And I was kind of like, frankly, the pay is not as much as what I was making.
I'm glad.
And I had to sit on set for 12 hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Yes, it's
and for an ADHD person like me, I was like, I'm going crazy. And these guys would argue with me. Like I would say, oh, you can't put the blood up here. And I remember one time I got in trouble because I touched a set prop. And the prop guys came over and got really mad at me that I couldn't touch it. And I was like, oh, dude, there's
nobody more territorial than a prop guy.
Yeah, is that right? I was like, this is just pretend, all right? Like, this is not the real thing. So just chill out.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, I could have told you the premise of your question is like, look, I love what I do, but there's a lot of pretentiousness inherent in it. And it's like they call it the industry, and it's just not it's not an industry. There's no like pipe fitting, like people don't get people don't get killed, they don't lose limbs when they do this job. It's not quite that. It's something, but it's not quite that. But the reason you couldn't touch the prop is because it was a union guy. I mean, it just
yes,
it's so dumb.
Now I know.
Exactly. So like and I understand you have unions in your business too, but I could kind of tell you're probably unfazed by like, you're like George Clooney. I saw a headless corpse last week. Like there's other things. There's other things under heaven and earth. But so this evolution for you, I mean, they're always going to kind of, I would imagine you have a primacy in your day job. So when you're like, look, arterial spray is going to go like this, not like this. And you're always going to get defeated with, but it looks cool. Go sit over there. Right. Like you're just not very important on this set. So I get it. Were you inspired initially by like any movie or TV show? Did you see a doctor or a health giver that was like, that's what I want to do with my life? A lot of people can trace that back to seeing something when they're young as an inspiration.
I actually was a computer programmer right out of college. So I did that. And I just sat coding all day and debugging code. And I was like, I cannot sit in front of the screen my entire career. I have to do something with people that's much more engaging and fun and, dramatic. And so I switched into medicine. I went back to school and got the medical degree. But I will say also, I was terrified for the first, the last part of my pre-med stuff. And then once I got in, that I was going to faint every time I would see blood or gore or bony things. And this, I kind of, when we were talking about doing the show, I was thinking, what is it about TV and movies that really just hit you in the viscera? Like, what is it? Which particular elements make you that are so disturbing that makes for good TV or movies? And the thing that I really struggled with was a metal thing in like stabbing into a body that really bothered me psychologically. And so like drawing blood or any sort of surgical procedure, I literally would pass out up until the first year of med school when I would see things like that. To the point where I volunteered at a hospital to try to get over my fear of blood and needles to try to do that. But every time I would try to give like a shot of insulin, I would pass out. And so it took a long time to get over that. But a lot of it was the psychological of, okay, why am I relating? Why does this disturb me so much? And then I recognized that the needle in the skin made me think the patient was in pain. And then once I figured out they weren't in pain, then I didn't have a problem. So when I was in the OR, when they were unconscious, like as a first year med student, I was like, oh, they're unconscious. They're not having pain. And oh my gosh, look at that spleen. That's amazing. Or look at that heart beating, and then I could sort of fall into enjoy the beauty of the human body. Right. But going back, nothing inspired me. In fact, a lot of things pushed me away from medicine. And then, but sometimes you find your true calling with time. And so I just sort of figured out, no, I actually do have a talent for solving problems, for debugging the human body, and for connecting to people, because that's really what they need.
So here's something I want to know, right? You're at home, you got the night off, the day off, you're flipping through the channels on the TV, you stumble upon some of the millions of medical shows, and they're doing something. What's those pet peeves? Like, I work in the news, and oftentimes I'll see shows about broadcast control rooms, and I have all sorts of professional things that are pet peeves for me, especially like that show, The Newsroom. For you, just what are some for you, or you're just like, this is just like so wrong, it's making my blood boil?
Okay, easy answer. The dramatic death scene, where the person has, that they're languishing, or they got hit or something, and then they suddenly regain this energy to give this last profound speech, that's going to turn the whole story, and then they die. And like, that's not the way it goes. Life trickles away, and it doesn't come back all of a sudden just so you can give your speech and then trickle out. So it's like, I was watching Stranger Things, and there was a scene where Papa is dying and he's giving this last speech to Elle. I'm like, all of a sudden his voice gets really strong, and Elle, I always wanted to tell you. I'm like, no, you'd be like lying on that desert, like, barely able to whisper if you truly were close to death. So that's one thing. Another thing is anatomically, like, you guys are not doctors, but that blood goes in tubes called arteries and veins, right? And it drives me crazy when they just literally, right? Right? They just give an injection like right into the muscle, or like they're like, everybody knows that it's supposed to go in a vein or an artery. Why don't you just angle the needle a little bit more realistically, right?
Are they just jabbing it down vertically?
Yes, or I mean, the what was it? Pulp Fiction, where they did do the injection of the epinephrine into the heart.
Yeah.
Theoretically, that could work. Theoretically, but it does bother me when they give injections and they're clearly trying to get blood or go for the vein or artery, and they literally just go straight into the forearm. I'm like, no, come on.
Well, that's the prop guy with the retractable needle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know who did CPR really well? Noah Wiley is the best fake CPR out there.
Nice.
He seems to
it's
be
not easy.
the guy because he's having his big
Emmy Award
comeback
winning.
in a new ER show, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
In essence.
And how realistic is that for somebody to have the peak of their fame, their career years ago, 10 years ago, and then come back so successfully?
Well, we're in an era of reboots. If I'm being honest, like it really is like a charge back to the center stage. He got I think he won the Emmy this year. The show is like a huge success. He's kind of been treading water since then, like what I love is that he was the young sort of like ingenue of that show. And now he's the old hand. So it's like,
Right.
He's almost grown into the role and we love him for it. But he's a great actor. He's done a lot of stuff, but there's something we want. And doctors, are like any other cohort. Like there's some good, some bad, some empathetic, some not, some good at their job with terrible bedside manner and all other manner of in between. But, we wish that they were all like Noah Wiley, that sort of strong empathy and like intense competence. And, someone once called The West Wing and ER like competence porn because we wish that our institutions, that people cared that much, that people were going to live and die by their code and by their duties. And that's just not how it is. Right. I'm imagining an ER is just like 7-Eleven. There's the one guy who's marking time, the one guy that wants to work up the ladder, the one girl that's just sort of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to burn it out till my retirement. It's like any other world, like I love movies where they poke into that and sort of add reality. Like the reason that Alien worked for me was not because it had good special effects. It's because all they did was bitch about their money all day. They were like, do you know what I mean? They were just a bunch of blue collar truckers like, well, I'm not doing shit unless I get paid. It's like, right. That's how every crew guy ever talked to me. They're not like, we need to get the shot. They don't give a shit about your shot. They care about their pension, So I want to believe that people get into, I mean, you could speak to this truthfully. You don't have to name names. Like, are there people in it for the money in medicine? Are there people in it for the glamour in medicine?
I think that's going away actually.
Okay.
Because first of all, ER, you don't make like the rank order of money is like neurosurgery, orthopedics, dermatology, those specialties make a ton of money because they're paid by procedure, right? If you do a job where you're reimbursed for replacing hips, you're going to replace as many hips as you can.
As you can. It's a volume business, you're saying.
It is a volume business, right? It's fee for service, right? ER, we're kind of in that mix where we do get paid more. If I do more to you, if I intubate you, if I cut your chest open, I get paid more.
Gotcha.
Sadly. But there are also other things that go into the equation. But in general, ER doctors are kind of paid an hourly rate.
Right.
And you have to hit certain metrics. Otherwise, you don't stick around, you don't get paid. Mm-hmm. So, as much as humans are different and there should be different, like you said, the different kinds, like 7-Eleven, like different kinds of workers, we kind of all have to toe the line, and there is a whip kind of cracked above us now where if you don't hit your metrics, if you don't get good patient satisfaction scores, then you don't get the shifts. And if you don't get the shifts, you can't pay your mortgage.
So here's a question then. I think that part of the reason people are drawn to ER shows, despite the fact that they're life or death, because really you can have life or death stakes in any field of, a hospital or any
Well,
wing.
but that's why there's cop shows, lawyer shows, doctor shows.
But my question is, what keeps you in the ER, right? So are you an adrenaline junkie? Is there something about the ER doctor specifically, the doctor that has chosen to stay in the ER for decades? Is there a reason why they don't leave that, even if they could go somewhere and make more money?
Yes. So part of it is that, we need to be stimulated by different things. We don't do well like a pediatrician to see the same sort of patient repeatedly and build those relationships. We we need that constant change of pathology walking through the door. And, it's, wait, what did you ask about the second part about like, why do we stay in? Oh, so,
Why do you stay,
like
yeah. once
you're trained in a certain subspecialty, like I can't switch. If I wanted to go and start like a Medi spa, I could, because most states allow you just to have the MD, but I couldn't become an OBGYN unless I went back and did more training. That would be another like 5 years of going back to school. So by the time, you were my age, you're like, do I want to sit, get paid $30,000 a year again for 5 more years?
Right.
So switching is kind of impossible at this point. I think that the people like the high stakes. People like I call it like an athletic event. Like I'm working at a place tomorrow where I go for 10 hours and like Noah Wiley in the Pitt, like if I can find 5 minutes to go to the bathroom in those 10 hours, I'm lucky. Like there's no time to eat. There's no time to, that's another pet peeve about these shows. There's so much socializing. I'm like, how do you have time for romance? Like you literally can maybe say to your colleague or to the nurse, like, hey, how's it going today? Good. Back to work. Another patient just came in.
Right.
So it's very exhausting. But it is like an athletic event. I always lose weight if I do a bunch of shifts, but after like 10 shifts in 2 weeks, I'm like, man, I'm down to a size 2. This is great.
But you don't work every day because it's like a fireman, right? Or like
it's tiring. Yeah.
Are you 3 on, 2 off or something like that? Or?
Totally depends. Where this is one of the appealing things about emergency medicine. You can do as many or as few shifts as you want. So I'm part-time now. Usually full-time is like 12 shifts a month. I am like 8 to 10, but I don't do nights, so I don't get paid as much as the other people.
Right, but that's where the Scarface injuries come through, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
You get the contractor that drilled a hole in his hand. So
Yes.
I think if I can distill what you said earlier, the reason that certain images of maladies bothered you was because of the empathetic thing, that the patient was suffering.
Right.
When you alleviate suffering, is that its own reward? I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, she's an adrenaline junkie. Damn it, you're working too many shifts. That's the pejorative of someone who, I would say you're very similar to my field. There's certain people that like to work on the set and there's certain people that won't. And it's because you have instant problem solving, and it's the same thing. You're on your feet all day. I mean, the stakes aren't as high. No one's going to die or bleed out or whatever, but it is that if you have time to sit and chit chat, you're not doing your job kind of thing. Right.
Right.
But I'm sure there's also an intense reward to you instantly saved a life, or you instantly remediated some pain or something, right? I mean, is that really what it's about for you? Is that
it is? That's a lot of it. And there are, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. There are people who want to be primary care doctors and they really enjoy managing diabetes or high blood pressure for 20 years. Yeah. To me, that's like, I as the construction worker would drive the nail into my hand if I had to do that kind of job because it's very satisfying. For example, you come in with your dislocated shoulder, right? You're miserable. You're in agony. If I can give you just the right anesthesia, and I love giving good anesthesia, like it's such a satisfaction. If I knock you out, but then I can wake you up perfectly and you don't stop breathing and your shoulder's back in, that makes me feel good that I've helped you. And that, you didn't have any adverse outcome like needing to be intubated because I gave you too much medication, and the stakes are kind of high. Like every time we intubate somebody, we kill you first, and then we save you by putting the tube in. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but we paralyze your entire body. So you can't breathe. So if I can't get that tube in a few minutes, hopefully less than 30 seconds, you stop breathing unless we bag you. But even then, that's not very effective.
That is something I wish I never knew.
I'm sorry. I mean, because we paralyze you, we actually paralyze every muscle, including your breathing muscles. So it is very high stakes, and you're right. I guess that's where the adrenaline part comes in. There's the empathy of me putting your shoulder back in, but then there's the high stakes of I better get this tube in the right hole, not the trachea, not the esophagus.
You know, I
Well,
I work. Sorry,
always
Alex.
think it-
I
yeah, go
work
ahead.
in broadcast news, and something I want people to talk to more ER doctors, because something I'll often tell people, and that in broadcast news, it's high pressure, low stakes. They'll act as if they're in a surgery, but at the end of the
Right.
day, if something goes wrong, we are so, like, nothing is impacted. And I wish that some of the people I worked with, producers, etc., would start talking to ER doctors so they could realize while they're in a control room, like, calm down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, this is not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When we
It's
were
human
gonna
nature, right?
Yeah.
when we were gonna talk about this, I did want to know sort of the nuts and bolts of like what's a Metzenbaum syndrome or whatever. But like, I'm always taken by that speech that Alec Baldwin in Malice, where he talks about the God complex, right? Because that is in essence what you're talking about. It's like you have someone's life in your hand, and then you not only bring them back to life, you alleviate the thing that required such a drastic treatment, and I think, film and TV, we're always looking for the most intense storyline. I don't know if it's just that thing we're trying to make something more than every day. I also think nowadays, in the last 10 years, we have to make crazier storylines because there's so much real
Absolutely.
life video out there and real life
Right.
stories. It's like, how can we turbocharge it? And I honest to goodness, I think that's why we're all a little caffeinated, just like naturally, is because we're so inundated with information, right? And
Right.
it's almost like we're like you now, like you've seen things with your own eyes that would probably, put me into like a rubber room, but you've not that you become inured to it, but you can see it as a problem to be solved and not a tragedy to be overcome by, right? So but I am fascinated by that God complex thing. It's funny when Sabina comes home grumpy from work, I can guess that it's some arrogant older male MD who's like, I got this, honey. Like, are you dealing with this still, or are all those dinosaurs dead now? Like, is there still the classic like boomer male, like I got the patriarch that you have to deal with?
Totally. But I've just learned, I call this medical prostitution. So what you have to do is literally, when you're new at a hospital, you have to make the effort to meet those guys, meet them face to face.
Right.
You tell them they look nice. You tell them that they're so smart, and you really appreciate the consult because you couldn't have figured it out yourself.
Yes.
And I kid you not, after that, they answer your call quickly.
So it's kind of like giving
I literally have to trot over them. I have to trot over to them and say, hi, I'm the new doctor. Hi, thank you so much for coming down and seeing the patient.
Still,
thanks for helping
with
me.
all your
Yes.
experience. Ugh.
I'm saying it's do you give them a little fake award? Like, you're the
Totally.
smartest doctor in the office.
Absolutely. But the thing is this also, consider the kind of person who goes into medicine, right? Like, you are rewarded all through your academic life for being able to memorize stuff.
Right.
That self-selects for people who might not necessarily have like the best social skills. So you might have a lot, and I kind of feel empathetic again for some of these older guys who they just did the right thing. They memorized all the bones of the body and all the nerves, and then they went and they learned how to be surgeons. And so, and they grew. Maybe some of them grew up in a time where that was normal to behave like that.
Yeah.
There are definitely doctors in medical school that were like that. So I just kind of like have to look to see, all right, what is going to work for the patient? If I have a patient who needs their expertise, I will be a medical prostitute all day long so I can get that surgeon to answer the phone for me.
Right. He has the competence and the speciality, so you subsume your ego in favor of the patient.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Well,
but that takes time,
it sounds like every other job, right, Sam?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that is. It's just unfortunate that someone. Do you think this is entirely gender bound? Right? Would a male doctor with your experience have to do that in a new setting?
Jump through the hoops.
Yeah, it's still because like we said before, we were talking about jack of all trades. Like, ER doctors still are considered by a lot of other doctors as we're just glorified triage nurses.
Right.
Oh, it's funny you
so-
mentioned that. I would figure that when you tell people that you're an ER doctor, that they're going to be more impressed probably because of their connection to TV shows and movies, than if somebody said, oh, I'm a radiologist or I'm a this or I'm a that, because ER doctors are kind of seen in their own way as soldiers, right? These are high stakes, fast paced, high pressure situations. Front lines. Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting how,
I think that's true in the general population, but within medicine itself, if I order too many tests, or if I call a consultation on a patient that doesn't need it, then the consultant will be like, I didn't need to come down to see this patient because I woke them up from the middle of their sleep, and they don't like that. And so they're going to say, why did you call me? I didn't need to weigh in on this.
So there's in the law field, they call it the CSI effect. There's so many of these shows that show us sort of the way that science and technology have helped the police evidence gathering level of their job, that juries now, just laymen, believe that a DNA test is the absolute end all be all, or a lie detector is an infallible machine. Do you have similar trouble where people come in to an ER and they're looking for the technology to sort of solve all the problems, or maybe give too much credence to these things?
Oh, it's not so much the technology, it's the influencers. Well, I follow
I've done my research.
Yes, I kid you not. And like my best friend's an OBGYN, and she'll say, look, my 30 years of medical experience and my training before that they're no match for the influencer. So why don't you have the influencer deliver your baby? Literally, that's what she'll say. But people come in and they'll say, well, I need you to check my vitamin E level. I'm like, we don't do that in the ER. Well, my influencer that I follow said that I need my vitamin E level checked because that's why I'm feeling weak. So literally people come in, I follow this girl and she said that, my knee pain is because of blah, 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 blah. So the internet has created a general expectation that we can perform miracles. And so they come in expecting tests or, a lot of them want scans. And if you don't scan them, like I said before, they feel
you're
like
a bad doctor.
I'm a bad doctor because I did not irradiate them, because then they're going to come in like Chernobyl after too many CT scans. And then what do we do?
How do you feel about MDs that are now merging as influencers? Because that's also happening. I'm seeing a lot of MDs on Instagram, which is like, did you know this? Did you know this? Do you prefer that? Are you cool with that? What are your feelings on it?
I look at it from the standpoint of the human species. And why is it that we need to feel important, that we need to be in a pulpit? Why do we need to be on that soapbox? You come to me in the emergency room and you don't have a choice. You can't select me as your doctor, right? Like when you roll in the ER, you get me or you get somebody else. You don't have a choice. But I guess maybe if some of these people are looking for patients, like dermatologists, I get that, right? Because they're all cash for patients.
It's pseudo marketing is what you're saying, a lot of it, right?
So I understand that. But when somebody gets on just to talk about, I don't know, I don't really follow social media. My husband loves to watch the farriers who dig out the pus from horses' hooves.
Oh,
I do too. I like to watch him.
And he's like,
poppers.
He's not even into animals. Like, I'm the one who rides horses. He doesn't have anything to, but he loves to watch this. I'm like, why is it that these farriers, their horses are not coming? Why is it this farrier putting himself out there?
Yeah.
And I think just people, so I don't look at it from the standpoint of medicine. I look at it from the standpoint of just people need to somehow feel popular and special, and they need to that feel validated. And I don't get that. But
you kind of said it earlier. If I'm an MD and I'm very good at memorizing Latin terms and every bone in the hand or whatever, then maybe I'm not as socially adept. So it's an interesting sort of modern way where they can, quote, talk to people, but they don't have to read, micro expressions and be
that could be
emotionally intelligent, right?
Right. They were losers going through school, and so now all of a sudden they're like
right. I've got 500 followers. People like
me.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say I would want you to go on, and we would just feed you, 10 charlatans a day that you could shoot down as like, don't listen to them.
I know, right?
Reasons not to come to the ER,
I know.
We're in a really interesting place. It was supposed to save us. And I feel like information is now more misinformation. And they're talking about it, between bad actors overseas, between technology and AI. It's just, I've been reading books more.
Right. No, but it has definitely changed. And I think going back to like movie and TVs and just the internet, just any sort of visual entertainment, it has changed people's perception of themselves, perception of what doctors should do. But I think I've seen, like I said before, I think it has increased anxiety about your health. And it's made common sense go by the wayside. And now people are worried about these very obscure, strange things. Like somebody came in the other day and said, I think I have serotonin syndrome. And I said, well, if you did, you would not be able to talk to me right now. You'd be having a seizure on the stretcher. So I don't think you really have serotonin syndrom.
But this is before visual stuff. This was when Google came out. What's the site that everybody goes to that, MedMD or whatever, like
WebMD. You were close.
I like that. I don't even know because I know that people suffer from various levels of hypochondria. Right. So it like turbocharge, I had a friend who was kind of like that. And then WebMD weaponized it like oh, my left eye is like twitching. Oh, it's definitely lupus. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm. Like, exactly. Yeah. Oh, but you know what? You would come to the ER because of that and say, I think I have lupus. Can you test me for lupus? And I'm like,
right. Well, now we're getting into mental health, right? It's just,
exactly.
You have to backstop them and be like, oh, hey, Beatrice, no, you're still fine. We'll see you next week,
it's a very fine line that I have to walk to validate their concerns, do just enough tests so that they feel satisfied, and then reassure them all within, a 2-hour time limit as specified by my management that I have to see a patient and have them out in 2 hours.
Do you see an uptick in this kind of stuff? I'm trying to think of like what mentally changed. And I think it was when they started doing advertisements and this phrase came into the vernacular. Ask your doctor about blank.
Right.
It was like, oh, let's take healthcare, which should just be like a utility, should be like hot water and electricity and shelter from the elements.
Yeah.
No, let's turn it into a consumer thing.
Right.
And the consumer's always right in America, right? So they walk in and they go, you're a doctor. Tell me about Zipatrin. And you're like, I don't even know if that's
Is that a real drug or did you just make that up?
I just made it up,
but I think you missed your calling. You should be in the pharmaceutical business. No, but
I once did an event for all the doctors. It was for Flonase. When Flonase launched, they spent $3 million to build like, that play that everybody, what is it called? My Town, Our Town.
Our Town.
So we built a real Our Town, and we hired an actor who always plays a doctor. The guy from The Game, who's like the guy that works for here, keep my pen, that guy. Mm-hmm. He was the guy. We flew him in $100,000 later so he could say, hey, 500 doctors that we flew into Palm Springs use Flonase. I'm like, this is a big hustle. What does this have to do with like helping people? It was grotesque.
We call it corporate medicine. It has become corporate medicine. And it's even worse when it's like venture capital buying out medical groups. And then you start to see all these metrics that you really have to
push the drugs. Yeah. I mean, that's,
oof. I mean, this is just so you know, where I work tomorrow, I have to see a patient when they walk, from the time they walk in the door, I have to see them within six minutes. Wow. And if 3 people walk in at the same time, I have to have 2 minutes between each patient. Mm-hmm. Then I have to see them, do the chart, do all their tests, and have them out the door in 2 hours.
And is there cameras?
Or admitted.
You? Like, do you get reviewed on a monthly basis? So I'm watching you on the overhead camera. You spent 3 minutes with Mrs. McGillicuddy. What's up
no,
there?
it's all electronic. So it's all the electronic health record. So that's the whole thing. Like, it knows when we click on the patient. It knows when we start the chart. It knows when we order things. It knows when they're discharged.
So be good for goodness sake. Yeah.
Pretty much. It's tricky.
Wow.
It makes you long for the old-timey doctor home
Yeah,
visits,
like
right?
or the little black bag, and you show
you're
up and
kind of
how's
existing
Timmy
in the
doing?
1984 of a doctor's nightmare, which is they just know what you're doing. They're just you don't really have that autonomy because you're being monitored in some way.
Completely. And I think that's why, you were asking the kind of people that like what medicine's going to be like. I think that we are going to end up more like a British or Canadian system where everything is controlled. There's very little autonomy for physicians. You get paid a lot less. I mean, maybe there's going to be less liability, and med school might cost less, but I think there's going to be just a lot more of you have to follow the protocols, like, the British health system. And, we're going to make as much as like teachers, maybe.
I mean, also, like, is it the era of the nurse practitioner with the
Right.
sort of e-health extension?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And they do, I work with a lot of nurse practitioners, physicians assistants. I think they do a great job with most patients because most patients come in with a lot of anxiety.
Right.
And, they don't, other than the place in St. Louis where I worked, the ones I see now, as we say, we're saving lives one gallbladder at a time.
I was gonna say. So is it a lot of seniors where you are now, Miami?
Seniors, but also just nervous people coming in with the sniffles and they're very nervous, yeah.
My wife was actually an NP for many years, started as an RN, became an NP. Yeah. And part of the reason she left clinical work was because they gave her, you get 20 minutes max with a patient and you've got to figure out what's wrong with them. And my wife was just like, I'm not Sherlock Holmes. And at the same time, the thing that would bug her the most is that, especially as an MP, I mean, the pay wasn't astronomical. She got in to help people. And the thing she couldn't get over was her own anxiety after the patient had left, feeling like, you know what? I don't know if I figured out what was wrong with them and I didn't have enough time and now they're out the door, right? And that would really sit on her. And that's why she got out of it because, when you talked about the corporations buying these medical groups, I mean, it's literally like in the DC area where I live, it's called MedStar. I don't know if it's anywhere else as well, but it was like, I used to go to a doctor and all of a sudden he was owned by MedStar and the game completely changes when that happens.
Right. Yep. There was a time when I was in Iraq where it was glorious because you could take care of people and not chart. You didn't have to do any health charting because they were coming in too quickly. You were supposed to write things down on paper, but literally you couldn't write stuff down on paper at 3 a.m. in a dark tent with like dirt and, wind all around you. So frequently we just did the best we could, but there was such a beautiful thing where we did not have to write this chart and keep track of all the things that you have to keep track of now.
Right.
Okay, so we'll do some final questions because we're coming up on an hour now, and we appreciate your time, and we're sure you don't get a lot of time off. I asked you.
We've been contractually mandated to only talk to you for 60 minutes, or our corporate overlords will give us.
I understand. I totally understand. I get it.
So I asked you what your pet peeves were, right? My next question is, when was the last time you remember watching some sort of medical drama and actually being impressed? Like some person like you is on this set and knows what they're doing.
The Pitt, they do a pretty good job.
All right.
Yeah, they do a really good job.
Do you know anyone who works on that?
Not anymore. I know Joe Sachs is one of the writers, and he was also when I did those episodes. They just do. I think it's just a level of excellence that they try to strive for. There's a couple of moments where you're like, really, come on. When they're first of all, when they're flirting and having a chance to talk, I'm like, come on, that's not real. But, when they're letting these med students do these procedures that are out of their league, they're not really ready for those. Right, but in general, the procedures are well done.
How many times do you hear the phrase, "Don't you die on me, damn it," in the ER typical day? Sorry.
No, because you don't say that because they're like ER doctors can be superstitious. So you don't say, I'm serious. Like if a patient says, "I'm afraid I'm going to die," that's terrifying because frequently they will. I don't know why. They just have this feeling.
Do they know or do they will it? Now let's get into
It's
metaphysics.
like sometimes humans have this ability to know that what they have is really bad.
Well, they say like animals. I know you have a dog. I see a dog. Like they'll isolate. They're like,
Right.
I'm done here. It's shutting
Right.
down. I'm going to go hide under the bed or behind
Right.
the closet or whatever. I do think that in the very end, we do kind of have that feeling, but we may not have the closure moment of like, but and one more thing, tell
I know.
tell
the
tell
soliloquy.
Agnes, I always loved her. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, no. My question is, I just discovered the Nick,
Oh, I love that.
which is about the history of medicine. And, we talk about all this stuff. And now even like, I mean, literally, there's robots rolling around the halls. I mean, they're not performing surgery, but they're pretty soon. I mean, they're cutting up with those little grape skins and we've seen it like it's a coming. And
go ahead.
And then you see the Nick and they're just kind of making it up as they go.
They're literally sucking blood out by using a crank.
Or, I mean, it's one step away from leeches, it's like, we've come a long way, baby, huh? I mean, as messed up as it is.
Yes, but in so many ways, I feel like medicine is still like Middle Ages because
it's more art than science.
We still don't understand even just like mental health. We don't know anything.
Sure. No.
Really?
Really? Well, I have an influencer I got to turn you on to.
Exactly.
All right, everybody. This is the How I Got Greenlit podcast. I want to thank Dr. Agnes Scoville so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
As always, we give our apologies to the corpse of Robert Redford. Perhaps next week we'll be doing his filmography. Agnes, every single week we tease that we might be doing a Robert Redford filmography, and we never do it. So we apologize to his dead body every week.
Don't
Agnes,
you die on me, Robert.
Yeah, don't you. Agnes, thank you again for being on the show.
You're so welcome. Thanks, guys.
Take care.